I have the incredible pleasure of, as he just said, awarding the Siegel Family Foundation Angel Award to a woman that I adore and that Global Health Corps adores. And that woman is Cheryl Dorsey. Cheryl is the president of the Echoing Green Foundation. And I know a lot of people in this room know Echoing Green really well. For those that don't, Echoing Green is a pioneer in the field of social innovation. Since they started, they have awarded $30 million in seed capital to 500 social entrepreneurs. And Cheryl herself sort of embodies everything that Echoing Green does. She herself was an Echoing Green Fellow in 1992 when she started the Family Van as a doctor in Boston. I first met Cheryl in 2009 when my co-founders and I had just started Global Health Corps. At the time, we were 2 months old. We had an idea, we were working really hard, and we were eagerly trying to become Echoing Green Fellows. And we were selected as finalists, and we went to the Echoing Green selection weekend, and we were totally terrified. It's like social innovation version of Survivor. They lock all the competitors in a hotel together, and you get to know each other all weekend, and you really are rooting for each other, and then they make you do interviews all day long. And it was totally intimidating, but as anyone that knows Cheryl would know, we shouldn't have been intimidated. Cheryl's whole mission in life is to build up others and nurture others that are trying to solve huge problems. So when you meet Cheryl, intimidating is like the last thing that you would ever think of, and she made the weekend very easy for us. Because of Echoing Green, we, over the past 2 years, have had 126 fellows working in East Africa, Southern Africa, and the United States, and we'll be adding 90 more in July. And Echoing Green definitely provided important capital to us, but more importantly, they've been incredible thought partners for us. They've taught us how you build a community of people with shared values that are focused on sharing best practices. They've taught us a ton about attracting top talent and placing them well. Cheryl's literally spent hours with me and several people on our team discussing strategy questions, who we should partner with, and how we should grow and what scale means for us. I'm excited to present to you the Siegel Family Foundation Angel in Africa Award.
That was lovely, very kind. You were talking about the Echoing Green selection process, likening it to the Survivor show. I always liken it to American Idol, and I am the Paula Abdul of Echoing Green. I sit there with these incredible young people crying, saying, "I love you all, you're going to change the world, give them all money." So, I have the best job in the world. So thank you for that lovely introduction. I also want to thank Barry, Dolly, Martin. Thank you so much for your support and your partnership. I'll talk in just a moment about our extraordinary partnership with the Siegel Family Foundation. I don't see Antoine. I also want to thank Antoine.
He's there.
Where's Antoine? Hey, Antoine.
I'm saying, here's the award.
Oh, I get an award. Growing up, I had one trophy, a 12th place trophy for bowling, but there were only 12 teams. So this actually is lovely, so thank you very much. So thank you to the Siegel family, Antoine, and also to Andy Bryan. You know, we just spent the weekend with Andy selecting our current class of Echoing Green Fellows. For those of you who don't know us, we are angel investors in the social sector, hence the name of the award. And every year we do our work through an annual global business plan competition where we put out an open call to young people around the world and say, if you've got an idea to make your community better, an innovative new idea for change, send it to us and we'll take a look. This past year, my colleague Rich Limesider, who runs our fellowship program, received 3,508 social business plans from 128 countries around the world. And that's just an extraordinary explosion in growth amongst this millennial generation who is really taking the charge to be next generation leaders seriously. that number represented like a 250% increase in the number of social business plans received in the last couple of years alone. I have to say it gives me great hope that this millennial generation will get a lot of things right that certainly my generation did not. And we had the very difficult job of sort of winnowing down that extraordinary pool of proposals down to 37 finalists that we flew in from 14 countries around the world this past weekend, and then even had the more onerous task of only selecting up to 20 for funding. So Andy, gave up his weekend to join us and make those very tough decisions. I sort of look back in our database, and like in the early 90s, we really didn't fund much on the continent. But beginning in like the late 90s, we started to see some really terrific leadership proposals coming out of Africa. As best I can tell, one of the first proposals that we funded was in the Gambia by two terrific social entrepreneurs, Julia Harrington and Alpha Fells, an organization called the Institute for African Human Rights and Development. By 2010, almost a third of our fellowship class, the fellowship applications received were focusing on Africa. I think that's an extraordinary growth trajectory for us. And in 2011, nearly 30% of the fellows that we funded were doing work in Africa. So that is a terrific trend, and we'd like to continue that. One of my favorite writers was the former editor-in-chief of Inc. magazine, George Gendron, and he used to talk about, at its core, at its essence, entrepreneurship is essentially the transformation of human capital, resilience, risk-taking, passion into wealth. And whether that's financial wealth, social wealth, public good wealth, it's about that very critical transformation. And that's what Echoing Green has been doing for the past 25 years. So we very firmly put a stake in the ground that when you invest in the person, that is the best and highest use of limited resources. There's also a famous tech entrepreneur and now incubator leader in the Bay Area, a guy named Paul Graham, who runs a program called the Y Combinator. And I love the way he talks about how you transform this human capital. He talks about, the idea is okay, but it's simply a starting point. If you want to put your money, if you want to laser-like focus on something, you go after that person, because that person is going to iterate, they're going to organically, go into that idea and tear it up and put it back together. And that's really how you get to this transformative level of change. Whether it's one of these incredible young innovators doing work in Africa, or whether it's Wendy Kopp from Teach for America, or Alan Casey and Michael Brown from City Year, or someone you may know, Mrs. Michelle Obama, who we funded to start the Chicago Office of Public Allies 20 plus years ago. This is a robust community of people whose lives have been transformed by this experience of trying to take on very tough problems and not ameliorate them, but solve them. And I think that's audacious and hopeful and optimistic, and it's the thing that gets me up every day and keeps me engaged in this phenomenal community. The last thing I will say is we spend a lot of time talking about innovation, and I know that as social innovation, social entrepreneurship, which nobody was really talking about 8 years ago, and now it's sort of entered the public consciousness in a big way, because so many of you have proven how powerful your models for social change can be. Innovation really has to be proactively nurtured and supported, and I think the way that Echoing Green does it is particularly important. So I already mentioned the notion that you always invest in people, not projects. I think there's some good research that we can find from the scientific community about how scientists get to ever greater levels of innovation that supports the point that the money always follows the people. That's what it's about. The second thing is maybe a more provocative point, but I think Echoing Green stands by it, the notion that you reward efforts and persistence and not results. Again, there's some really interesting studies that come out of the NIH versus the Howard Hughes Medical Institute showing that if you really push young scientists to focus on results, you get a slightly better cholesterol reducing drug. That's not big, bold change, right? But if you go after their persistence, their passion, and you let them fail big, but you keep picking them up and letting them go forward, that's how you get to systems level change. Echoing Green at the end of the day is a family, and I'll just give you an example. I was going to email you last night, Barbara, but we had a terrific meeting with some of the folks from HP. It was because of Barbara. Everybody says, oh, Echoing Green gives these young people some seed capital, some support, but I can't underscore enough how much these young innovators give to us. They are so generous with their time, their intellectual capital, and their networks. And the fact that Barbara, who's building an extraordinary social enterprise and who is busy, took the time to facilitate an introduction to Echoing Green, I think really says, exemplifies better than I could ever articulate what this power means. And at the end of the day, and again, this was true for me 20 years ago, and Barbara or Raj or Emma or George can dispute this, but the money mattered to me 20 years ago when I was in medical school. It meant that Echoing Green's money allowed me to not eat ramen noodles every night, right? I could maybe go to McDonald's once a week. I know I shouldn't say that's something healthy, but I was going to McDonald's. So I could go out and maybe have some meat once a week. I could pay my rent while I was trying to start this mobile health unit. But most importantly was access to this network. So when everybody told you were crazy, you couldn't do it, when you were falling down, there was this larger community of people that picked you up and kept you whole. And that, to me, is invaluable and priceless. And I think it continues to be the value add that is Echoing Green today. So again, I am so grateful to the Siegel Family Foundation. You guys have been extraordinary partners. We're small but mighty, but you guys have really allowed us to amplify our impact because you've worked hand in hand with us. So we are grateful for that. And thank you for my award. I'm so excited.